Hi students, today we're going to go over how to draw a realistic eye. So again, in our portrait packet, there is going to be an instruction sheet with step-by-step instructions that we're also going to be doing live. So on the second page, which is your practice, you can go ahead and start one of these practices as you watch this video, or the bottom one you're going to be drawing your own. So you can hang on to that for a minute and just work on either the top practices or on a plain piece of paper in your sketchbook. When we're drawing an eye, we're going to start with the eyelid shape, which is kind of like a lemon or a seed. So the top part's going to curve up and down. I usually end my farther or outside corner a little bit higher, but again, look at the details on your person. Where does their eyelid stop and start? The inside corner, we're going to round it just a little bit and then finish that curve. Next, we're going to draw the iris, or the colorful part of the eye, and the pupil, and the highlight, so all that stuff right in the middle. When you are looking at someone's eye, we often do not see the entire iris. Oftentimes, our upper, lower, or both eyelids cover at least a portion of it. When you are making your iris, the colorful part, you do want to make sure it's a circle, though. We're going to make that circle with just a little bit of it being hidden by the eyelids. Again, look at those details on your person. For the pupil, it's going to be right in the center of your iris. So think of a bullseye, or like the target symbol. The iris is the outer circle, and your pupil is going to be right in the middle. As you see, when I'm making my circle, I'm kind of doing light feathery lines, so I can kind of check as I'm going until I get an outline that I think I like. The next step is going to be to add the highlights. Now this is where light is reflecting on your eyelid, or I'm sorry, on your eye from the room that you are in. So whatever the light sources are, it's going to be the shape of those highlights. So if you're in a room like the art room, where we have tall rectangular windows, you might have tall rectangular reflections in your eye. Because the eye is curved, oftentimes they'll be a little bit distorted. Maybe something like that. So I am outlining these because those are going to be the two spots of the eye that I leave completely white. I'm going to erase that little part of the iris that I still had in there. And these are going to be completely white. Moving on to step 4. We're going to add the tear duct and the muscle in the inside corner of your eye. For the tear duct, I just like to put a little ball, a little goober in there. And then for the muscle, it's just a curved line. Step 5 is drawing the upper, sometimes lower, creases of the eye, as well as the waterline. So if we even look at our examples that we're going to practice on, you can see that this eye, the crease is a little bit lower down. This is more of a hooded eye, where this one you can see quite a bit of space between. On this third example, there's more space on this side, and then it gets more narrow towards the outside corner. So again, that's one of the details that you can pay attention to while you're drawing your person to make it look more realistic and more like the person you're drawing. I'm going to go ahead and make a curve. This one I'm just kind of drawing from my imagination, so I get to determine what it looks like. We might even see a little bit of a crease below. Try and avoid drawing this one too dark because we don't want it to make your person look really tired unless that's what you're going for. This outside part, this is called your waterline. So that's the part in between your eyeball and your eyelashes. This part's important for us to draw because if we forget it, it sometimes looks like our eyelashes are going straight out of our eyeball, which is kind of disgusting. This is an extra little detail that you can add in that will add to the realistic version of an eye drawing. So it's just nice and little. It kind of traces the outside of the line that you already drew. And then as it gets towards the inside of the corner, or inside corner, it kind of just disappears a little bit. Moving on to step 6, you're now going to start to add value. So this, we have all of our contour lines. Everything's kind of laid out and where we want it to be. Now we're just shading. When you are shading a portrait, please remember, even if you're pale like me, your skin should not be the color of the paper. The only thing that's going to stay the color of the paper are going to be any highlights, like the inside of the eye. So even on the eyelid, we're going to add shadows. We're going to add shadows around here where your nose would have some shadows created, and even on the inside of the eye. So the white of your eye, even though it's called the white of your eye, we want to make it look three-dimensional. Think back to our project with the 3D shaded forms. We want to make it look rounded. One way we can do that is by adding light shadows around the outside corners, as well as below the lash line. So as you're thinking about how your eye functions, your lashes stick out over. So you're going to have a darker shadow along the top corner because of those lashes. You can see I'm drawing really, really light with my pencil right now because we don't want to make it look too dark for the white of the eye. Come back to the side and add some shadows in the top corner to show those lashes, and then if you feel like you can see the pencil marks too much, I like to just come in with my fingers and kind of smudge it out. And then I'll also bring, now that I have a little bit of pencil on my finger, I'll bring that towards the middle of the eye so that this part that's white isn't completely white. Right now that might look kind of dark because nothing else is shaded in, but once we add a little bit more value, especially to the iris, it's going to look totally normal. I'm going to take a minute now and add more shadows around the eye, including on the eyelid and the tear duct. Okay, so you can see now I've added some more shadows for the skin. Anytime I felt like it was getting a little bit too sketchy, like I could see my pencil lines, I just took my finger and smudged out as well. Do remember that anywhere that you feel like it's a little bit too dark, you can always come back in and erase a little bit. So adding in some highlights sometimes can make it have a more realistic texture as well. When you're looking at the shape of the eyelid when it's shaded, the center is usually a little bit lighter and then it's darker on the sides. Same with the bottom, but it's a little bit lighter overall. I also added a little bit of shadow for the nose. We will be talking about noses later on in this unit, and then you'll be able to add that piece back in. So the next thing you're going to do is you are going to make the two darkest parts of your eye. That is going to be the outside or the outline of the iris and the pupil. So these are filled in super, super dark. When you are drawing these, I usually take that line for the iris, the outside of the iris, and I thicken it up a little bit. Take a look in the mirror or look at a photograph of an eyeball and you'll notice that this line is pretty thick. So it's a little bit thicker than the width of our pencil. As I'm doing this, I'm making sure to go slow and I'm turning my paper to help me get a better angle at it because I don't want to get this part too dark too quickly and kind of go outside lines because then it would be harder to erase since I'm pressing pretty hard with my pencil, making a darker mark. For the pupil, this is also the darkest part. Remember, we're going to keep that highlight totally white, so I like to start by kind of outlining where I'm going to fill in and fill it in nice and dark. When you're doing this, try and make sure that you're not pressing too hard at first. I can always come back and layer more pencil, but we don't want to see kind of like the direction your pencil was going. If we go too dark too quickly, we'll often see those lines. So you can see it's starting to look a little bit more finished. So the last part the almost last part, we are going to draw the details of the iris. So the iris is the colorful part of the eye. Even when you're drawing in black and white, it's really important to pay attention to the texture of the iris. If you take a close look, you'll see that you have kind of these hills and valleys. Irises are pretty fascinating close up. I like to start mine by drawing kind of like really light spokes on a bike wheel. So going out from the center, radiating, I'm going to start to add some details and some textures. Again, making sure that when I get to the highlights that I outlined, I'm not drawing anything there. I'm also going to do the same thing from the outside edge. These ones I'm going to make a little bit smaller or shorter. Still kind of pointing them towards the middle. So I can use the ones that I originally drew to kind of guide me on what angle I want to draw them at. And then maybe some more out from the center that are a little bit little. So now we have the start of some texture. When you're coloring it in a little bit more, you may notice that eyes usually are a little bit darker around the iris and around the pupil and around the very outside of the iris. So I'm going to come back in and start to add some shadows just with some light pencil. And I'm trying to do this a little bit randomly. So I'm not going just up, down, up, down, up, down. I'm going up, a little bit up, a little bit up, and having it be a little bit more randomized. I'm pressing a little bit lighter than I did for the first lines that I drew on here because I want to make sure that I can still see those when I'm done. I'm going to come back and do the same thing around the center, around the pupil. Just pressing nice and light to start to fill in. It's always easier to go darker in a few more layers than it is to make it a little bit lighter without erasing everything. I'm also going to add some textural lines that kind of mimic the shape of the eye. This will help make the iris not look quite so flat and give it a little bit of dimension, or make it look more 3D is what we're going for. I can come back in and I'm going to make the part right underneath the lash line a little bit darker because again, just like the white of the eye, you still have those eyelashes that are casting a shadow. So the top part of your iris is going to be shadowed by your eyelashes. If you think this looks too light or too dark, you can always erase some, add some more, add a little bit more texture. If you want to get rid of some of your lines, you can come back in and kind of smudge it a little bit to smooth it out. I'm going to actually clean up that edge a little bit of the iris because I went a little bit outside my line. I'm going to make this side a little bit thicker too. Okay, so now your iris starts to have some texture in it and it looks shiny because of that highlight that we left in there. So it's starting to be more realistic. The last two things we're going to do is we're going to add some hair onto your eye, including your eyelashes and your eyebrow. When you are making your lashes, we want to flick our brush, or our pencil. So when you are flicking your pencil, you push a little bit harder and you kind of lift up as you leave. That is going to naturally mimic the way your eyelashes are shaped, where it's a little bit thicker at the root, and towards the tip of the eyelash, it's a little bit lighter, thinner. When you are doing eyelashes, if you want to make it look more feminine, add darker and longer and more eyelashes. If you want it to look a little bit more masculine, do a little bit fewer lashes with a little bit less curve or curl to them. Keep in mind that your eyelashes, they grow, they fall out, you have new ones, you have old ones, so they're not all going to be the same length, and they're not going to all go in the exact same direction. In general, if we're looking at an eyelash, they will curve out until you get to about the middle of the eye, and then they start to curl in. Your lashes on the outside corner of your eyes are much longer, where your lashes on the inside corner are much shorter and fewer. You have more lashes on the top than you do on the bottom. So when I'm starting to draw lashes, I like to start from the outside corner, right along that lash line. Maybe I have one that goes down and up. Maybe they overlap a little bit. Maybe I have one that's a little bit short in there. Maybe I have one that curves more than the others. Adding lashes that aren't exactly perfect is going to make your drawing look more realistic. So each time I'm doing this, I'm pushing my pencil down and then I'm lifting it up to flick it. I am using quite a bit of pressure because I want these lashes to be nice and dark, and I don't want to have to go over them another time because it's going to be really hard to trace each one of these. You should have enough where you can't really count how many lashes there are, but it kind of fills that space. So as I get towards the center, my lashes are going to get shorter. They're going to get a little bit farther apart, and they are going to start to curve towards the inside corner. So right along the center of the pupil, that's when I'm going to start flicking my eyelashes the other way. So you'll have a few right here that maybe stick straight up. Maybe they crisscross and even go opposite directions. And then fewer and fewer towards the center. Always take a look back and see if you feel like you need more or less. If you feel like you have some areas where they look too perfect, add some back in that kind of crisscross over each other. For the bottom lash line, we're going to use that water line that we made before, and we're going to start on the outside of that water line. So they aren't coming from the eye part, on the outside of the water line, and they are going to curve out and down. Remember, these ones are a little bit thinner, or shorter I should say, and there's few of them compared to the top. As we get towards the center, they start to go the opposite direction and curve towards the inside. The last thing I'm going to do is my eyebrow. So the eyebrow, you're going to use a very similar flick of your wrist. We're going to come straight up from the shadow on the nose. Your eyebrow, the inside corner, starts about where your inside corner is. If we make a mark about here, so it goes from the side of your nostril, outside of your nostril, through the pupil, that's going to be your arch or the highest point, and that's going to be where it starts to fall down. So think about the direction eyebrows grow when you are drawing your person's eyebrow. Again, if you want it to look a little bit more feminine or masculine, you can do smaller or shorter brows. You can make them fuller, you can make them crisscross a little bit more to give it a different effect. Around this area, your eyebrow sometimes starts to grow sideways, your hairs do, rather than just straight up and down. And then you have fewer hairs towards the outside usually. Don't be afraid to make them look a little bit crazy, put a few out of place. It'll make your portrait have more character and look more realistic. We don't want it to be perfect. So now you have hopefully drawn a realistic eye. Your practices for today, you are going to draw the matching eye for the 3 photographs. So this is the right eye. Your job is to try and draw the left eye. This is left eye, you try and draw the right. For the bottom portion, I want you to try drawing your own eye. So try drawing both of them at once. Remember, symmetry is very hard to get at the very beginning. So if you want to, one way is to draw one line at a time and then go back and do the other side back and forth. Or you can draw one use a paper and trace over it, flip the paper over for the other side, and draw over it again to impress the pencil that's on the back. Please let me know if you need any help, and I hope you guys have some fun drawing some eyes today.